Hello fans and welcome back to another predictions video! Wow, I can't believe that November is already almost here and we're less than a month away from Endwalker as well. So as I promised, here is the latest prediction video for what I think will be coming for 6.0, and as you glimpse from the title, this is going to be discussing the new raid series Pandemonium. I felt that I needed a little bit of a break from the main scenario predictions, and I've been giving this particular prediction a lot of thought recently, especially since we did get a tiny bit of new information about the new raid series. Not much, but we did see the old face featured of none other than Lahabrea. So according to the main Endwalker site, we have this about the raid. Far beneath the ground upon which mortals tread, steeped in darkness, deep as starless nights, ancient power lies dormant, too hungry, too brutal, too monstrous. What cannot be controlled must be contained. Here, in Pandemonium, dare you make the descent. And that's pretty much all that we know for sure about Pandemonium so far. So I felt that I should weigh in and see what I personally think about it and see what you all think. So let's first start off with the word Pandemonium. So Pandemonium is actually comprised of two Greek words. One, of course, is pan, which means all, and demonium, which is demon. There are some translations where it can also mean little angel or something like that, but roughly it translates to all demons. It also happens to be the name of the castle of Lucifer in the capital of Hell in Paradise Lost. But it's also stated to mean a wild uproar, such as a crowd of people or a chaotic situation. So I guess a synonym for hell. So just hearing all that already shows that we are bound to be full of chaos for this part alone. So I have two separate theories to what Pandemonium could be all about. Now we do know for a fact that it is going to be an original story for 14, but based on the artwork, which shows Lahabrea as well as the name, it seems that there may be some Final Fantasy II references here and there, because that is the same name as the fortress. The first prediction is this, that whatever it was that destroyed the world during the final days will appear again. So according to the Final Fantasy wiki, at some point a mysterious sound emanating from the depths of their star caused the ancients to lose control of their creation magic, unleashing monsters formed from their subconscious spheres. Now, what was it that caused the sound? We still don't know. We really don't have any clear answers to what it was that initially caused the final days. But I'm sure that we will be discussing that and finding out more information during the main scenario when Endwalker comes out. But whatever it was, it appears that maybe some part of it has survived somehow. It could have been either some kind of malicious creature or an event that not even the Ascians were ever able to figure out. Which really makes me wonder that even if they were able to succeed in rejoining the shards, history could end up repeating itself and they could have the final days all over again. Especially since they don't seem to have learned their lesson. All we know for sure is that when the final days started, it grew to such a point that their own creation magic started to manifest their deepest fears, and that was when all the monsters started to appear. They took on life all their own when their magics grew. And Ramu stated back in 2.3 that in the beginning that there was no such duality, that light and darkness only appeared when man was born. Which is actually a pretty nice pre-reference to how the primal Zodiark and Hydaelyn may have appeared. But what if another theory is that they have always been there, and that the ancients just gave a form to the will of the planet? It was actually something that I was thinking about when I started doing a lot of research on both Zodiark and Hydaelyn, and it was like maybe it's some kind of split personality of the star itself, since there is both light and darkness inside of everyone, and both of them are just part of the same star but split into two separate beings. And when we spoke to Minfilia as the word of the mother, it seems like that may have been at least part of it. It was stated though that Zodiark coveted more power, maybe as some kind of a self-defense to protect the star, since the ancients were using their creation magics and maybe unknowingly harming the planet with how much was being used. Maybe the sound is not some malicious force, but maybe it was created by the planet itself, like antibodies, like maybe some kind of white blood cells just kind of kicking off all of the bad viruses that trying to kill it. At least that's the clearest that I could really make of what was going on inside my head when I thought this up. So this could have been like some kind of self-defense since the ancients were using their magics. Maybe the sound was just somehow being taken advantage of, and they ended up summoning Zodiark in the process before Hydaelyn was created afterwards to help keep him in balance because, again, they were part of one star. Again, this is just a lot of speculation since we don't know what the root cause of the problem was during the final days. But I can't imagine that the Ancients' creation magic did not have a hand at being at least part of the problem. Because what they were doing back then is literally the same thing as summoning a primal in this day and age, with the difference being that the Ancients could hold so much more ether in their bodies that they didn't have to rely on crystals or others to really create them through prayer. Now that's all well and good, but I suspect that if this creation magic was used often enough, even for such little things such as creating clothes or food, then I can only assume that they would start to drain the world of ether like how summoning does that today. Maybe they weren't aware of what they were doing was potentially harmful, maybe they felt like they were just using such a small amount it wouldn't make any difference, but I really don't know about that. We still don't really know too much more about their creation magics either, but I suspect that their magic may have put a heavy strain on the planet, and that was what caused it to kind of lash out, because it was the planet's way of defending itself because it was literally dying on the inside. Not only that, but I also think that the fall of Amarant was due, at least in part, to the Amarantines and their own complacency. In several of the quests that we have taken in the recreated Amarant, we have seen and heard the specters talking about problems happening across the sea in other cities, meaning that in the other cities around the world during this time, there were already problems already rising. So there is no shortage of Amarantines debating if they should go and help them or leave them to deal with this mess on their own, but this really shows especially at how blasé they were, speaking about how there never seemed to be a big issue with creation magics before. Because you think that if there was a problem with creation magics happening, like even if it's elsewhere in the world, they would be taking the whole thing very seriously. And it leads me to believe that there may have been plenty of problems in the past, like with creation magic maybe getting a little bit out of hand. Thanks to Tales from the Shadows, we have read a couple stories. One of them talks about how it does seem that creation magic does tend to get out of hand every once in a while if you don't have a firm grasp of it. And maybe your imagination just kind of goes wild and it just ends up creating a monster like how it happened there. So the fact that they were very calm about this, at least in the beginning, leads me to believe that it really wasn't too uncommon that maybe creation magics tended to get a little bit out of hand. Or at the very least, if they did get out of hand, then they may have been taken care of with minimal damage. The Amarantines may have believed that this was just a minor problem that would be solved eventually, and it was just a minor hiccup in their eternal peaceful paradise. That was something they honestly seemed to believe until it just grew so big that they couldn't ignore it anymore. And it seemed that once they realized it, it was already out of their control and it was too late to try and have it contained, and it just spread very quickly. I mean, the Convocation was forced to summon Zodiark, which literally took sacrificing half of their entire race to fix this problem. And from what we have seen, though, it does look like they did their best to try to keep the star healthy and regulated, not like Yulmore, where they pretty much did whatever they wanted and basked away in decadence. But the fact that the entire world was literally on fire shows that maybe, unless everyone could use creation magic, that maybe it wasn't just their use of magic that caused the final days. I mean, I won't rule out the idea of maybe a meteor shower because I'm reminded of Genova from Final Fantasy VII, who sailed the cosmos with a dead planet as a ship before crashing on Earth. Like, maybe we have a Genova/alien-like creature that happened to ride in with the meteor shower that was the remains of the last planet she destroyed and just happened to make her home here. We do know that there is life out there on like other planets, so I think it's fair to at least chalk that up as a possibility. The point I'm trying to make here, though, is that their creation magic may have been part of the reason why the final days happened, and maybe the sound was just some kind of defense mechanism that the planet created to try to put a stop to it, but it ended up getting completely out of control. And when they summoned Zodiark, it could have been that the sound, whatever it was, may have been sealed away with Zodiark after he was imprisoned in the moon. Maybe even locked up with Zodiark as some kind of prison warden, kind of keeping it under control. Of that we don't know yet. But if this sound has laid dormant all these years, then it is possible, depending on how the main scenario quest goes, that Zodiark and Hydaelyn could soon be leaving the story once and for all. meaning that it is now back, especially with the prison warden no longer there, and it could be growing to a point it's threatening the world once again. All we know for sure about this thing, whatever it was, is that it was both ancient and powerful, which leads us to the second prediction. The second prediction is that Lahabrea somehow is able to return and is trying to complete the rejoining. I honestly don't think that we will have a raid series about Zodiark because the story is supposed to wrap up with him in Heidelin, but I do think that we will be getting some kind of references to Final Fantasy II here as well. I mean, it's a very roundabout reference to 2 because Lahabrea is named after the Scion of Light, who is the counterpart to Metis the Corrupt. Even his emblem is tied with that. But also, Metis Palamisia is the name of the Emperor from Final Fantasy II. Now, spoilers here if you haven't played 2, but the Emperor very famously dies pretty easily in that game, but this was all part of his plan. He dies because he's going to try to take over Hell, which he does, and ends up dragging the palace, Pandemonium, up with him when he returns. Meanwhile, his good half takes over Heaven, and it's made his palace, Orberoth, his main base. So if Lahabrea returns in whatever form that may be, and we have to go both down to Heaven and Hell during the course of these raids, I think that would be awesome! I could totally see that. I think that would be amazing to watch. Now, Lahabrea was one of the Unsundered. He was one of the 3 Unsundered along with Emixelk and Elidibus. We met him very early on. He was there in A Realm Reborn, and we weren't able to put a stop to his plan when he tried to take over Thancred. Spoilers there, just in case. But yeah, we really don't see him again after that because we weren't able to properly destroy him at that point. At that point in time, we did not have the means to be able to hold his soul there, so he was able to escape after abandoning Thancred's body. We don't see him again until Heaven's Ward, where he, along with Igayorm, meet us inside of Azus Law, where we end up battling against them. And Thordan ends up cutting him down for us after we took care of Igayorm. Wow. That kind of felt so anticlimactic after everything he put us through during A Realm Reborn. That's just me anyway. It's just that Lahabrea, we really was the only one of the Unsundered that we didn't have some kind of understanding here, like we did with both Emixelk and Elidibus. In fact, I kind of feel cheated that we didn't kill him ourselves back in Heaven's Ward, so thanks for that, Thordan. It felt kind of cheap, especially after finding out that the Unsundered were supposed to be the most powerful of all the Ascians. Sure, I mean, he was a lot of trouble for us in A Realm Reborn, but even then, he felt so one-dimensional compared to other antagonists that we've had since then. Like the other Unsundered, Emixelk and Elidibus, there's also Yotsuyu, Nidhogg. Now those were great antagonists. I really enjoyed them to various degrees and for different reasons. Especially when it came to like the Unsundered. Elidibus and Emixelk were some of the best antagonists that I've seen, especially Emmett. But compared to them, Lahabrea felt very much like a letdown. I think that if he was written with as much depth that we've had from Emixelk, then he would be remembered much more fondly like how Emixelk is, rather than how he is, kind of like a cheap villain. Maybe that's why the dev team is trying to do this. Like maybe his ether was absorbed by the Eye of Nidhogg, which is pretty much what happened after Thordan cut him down and absorbed his ether. Maybe it was dormant inside the eyes for a time, but they were drained and eventually destroyed by Estinian, and he was able to escape from that. That's one theory at least. Maybe Pandemonium will deal with defeating Lahabrea and his ancient creations once and for all, especially tracking down whatever sad remains are left of his soul and then defeating a kind of recreated version of himself. Maybe the Ascians are supposed to be tempered and he could sense that his master is gone, so we do manage to destroy Zodiark during the story after he creates like a new recreated version of Zodiark, because he's still trying to go through with the plan to restore the star. Or maybe Lahabrea isn't even controlling whatever dark place that Pandemonium is, and he's just a prisoner trapped there by this ancient evil being, whatever it is. Maybe it's kind of like how Mitron, who was trapped inside Eden, spoilers there as well, and we have to end up rescuing him in order to get some answer. Though again, I find it hard to believe that he could be a menace anymore after how easily he was taken out of and how long he's been gone. My best guess for this theory altogether is that this raid could be dealing with any final plans that were set in motion by Lahabrea, and any remaining creations that he may have had, and maybe even his servants. It was known that Lahabrea did have a handful of weak servants, like unlike some of the other Ascians that we've seen, he seemed to have like his own separate group of servants who served directly underneath him. So maybe this could be about his servants trying to bring him back, like maybe trying to put their master's plan into motion. Especially if you play through the Summoner questline, you can actually see some of them. And they're the ones who are causing trouble. I mean, it could be that Pandemonium is serving more as a name of a personal research lab or base. I mean, I could completely see bosses that he may have created over the centuries, maybe references to monsters from Final Fantasy II mixed in as well. Maybe even a clone or two of Lahabrea who's carrying their memories or something like that. If this were the case, then not only would the Raid series be a solid callback to past Final Fantasy games, which Final Fantasy XIV loves to do, but in a way, it gives us a really satisfying conclusion to the last of the Unsundered, and maybe become more of a true inheritor to the Ancients' legacy like with Emmett, Selk, and Elidibus. Maybe come to some kind of understanding with Lahabrea, like maybe understand more about his past and what big role he had in all of this. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Wow, so much predictions, so little time, and that is literally in this case. I can't believe that it's already almost November, and we are now less than 3 weeks away from the early release. I just want to thank so many people out there for helping me to support my channel and have been loving my predictions so far. It really means a lot to me. And to a fan that had asked me, yes, I do have a couple more predictions to make before the release date. Unfortunately, I just don't have enough time to do all the predictions that I want to do, so I decided to narrow my list down to just 2 more prediction videos before the release. So the next one will be going up next week, and it will be discussing my predictions on who we will lose in Endwalker. I know it's a morbid topic, no one likes to talk about death, but I am betting that we will be getting a few deaths here and there, and so this is going to be more of my ideas on who I think will make it out alive before the end. I promise it won't be as dark as it sounds. And finally, during the final week, I will have my last prediction where I will be making my best guess to how the story for the main scenario will go. I do not plan at all being right. I am perfectly okay with being 100% wrong. It's just something I want to do for fun, but it's just going to be my personal opinions on what I think could happen, what I think is logically going to happen. So again, just take from it what you will, just enjoy it for what it is. It's almost here, I cannot wait, but until next time everyone, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have an amazing Halloween. Bye!